Welcome to episode 8 of the Filmmaker Film Watcher podcast. I'm filmmaker Richard Di Gregorio.
And I'm film watcher Greg Ralph.
So this week we've decided to go into more of a sort of kid-friendly version of the podcast today. So what we've decided to do is just review 3 films with more of a child-friendly nature.
And both being dads as well, I imagine.
Yeah. So in terms of the films we've got to talk about this week, we've got A Shared Confession. So it's a bit different.
Awfully crowded in the confessional box.
Which is an old Disney classic, Old Yeller. And we'll be reviewing 2 other films, which is Pixar's The Incredibles and also Paddington. So, Greg, tell us about Old Yeller.
Well, this 1957 Disney film is a classic, and it's a milestone in many American childhoods. And this is because there's a traumatic event towards the end of the film, which means it's probably not a film for young children, despite its G rating. So after the American Civil War in Texas, a man leaves his wife and 2 young sons to go on a cattle drive for 3 or 4 months. And while Dad's gone, adolescent Travis, Tommy Kirk, is made the man of the house, assisting his mother Katie, Dorothy Maguire. And Travis enjoys his new responsibility as a sign that he's becoming a man, even though he's still clearly a child enjoying the outdoors, completely oblivious to the local girl who obviously fancies him. At first he resents a stray dog, Old Yeller, that his younger brother and mother readily adopt as soon as Dad is gone, but Travis comes to value and love the loyal dog that ensures their survival. But the Wild West is not a safe place to be, and eventually Travis has to make a hard decision about the dog, which is the true beginning of his journey out of childhood. Now, as we said, neither of us has seen this film before. Ricardo, what did you think? And even more importantly, did you cry?
No, I didn't. It's meant to be a very sad film, and as a spoiler alert, I think you probably meant to work it out when you're watching it anyway.
Okay, he has to shoot the dog.
That's right. And it's quite a tough scene for him, and you've obviously gotten to know Old Yeller throughout the film and whatnot. But I've never owned a dog, okay? I've never owned a dog, so I really don't know the relationship between... I know it's special, I know it's man's best friend and all the rest of it, but I did not even feel a little bit sad in this film. Bring out the tissues? No, I didn't at all. I liked it. Old Yeller, it's a lovely film. It's really got the Disney sort of classic, it's got Old Yeller, it's a great sort of song. and I love the performances are all great. And it's a lovely family film. I was really surprised by the younger actor, the younger brother.
Yep.
And what they got him to do in the film. I mean, he's fighting with a young bear at one point, and I'm going, what? Did he actually have to fight and sort of play with a young bear? I mean, really? Jeepers. Just a few things there, and there was like...
And some of those will come back too, I'm sure.
Yeah. I enjoyed it. I thought it was lovely, but I didn't cry. So did you?
Well, I'm sort of halfway between crying and what you're saying. So, because I'm a complex, emotional kind of guy, what can I say? But, I mean, we owned dogs when I was a child, and, I had some involvement with the dogs. I'm not a huge pet person. We don't currently have a dog, but we're thinking about it. But there are dog films that have really caught me up emotionally, and I'm thinking of the Australian film Red Dog and the American film Hachi. I mean, Hachi... My family watched it, adults, children, different ages, and we were all in tears at the end. It's the only film I think...
That was the Lasse Hallström film?
I think so, yes.
Yeah, he's very good at that. He's very good at giving that emotion.
And so it's the only film I think we've all seen where we're all in tears. So it will do it for me. I knew what was coming because I'd read a sort of photo novelisation as a child, so I knew the basic outline of the story, and I saw the clues they kept planting in the early part of the film about I'll shoot that dog between the eyes when he doesn't like it, and all this stuff that's giving you the signals. And when we got to it, I thought, okay, I know what's going to happen. What am I going to feel like? And it could have worked maybe, but there's one really fatal moment in this film, like a flaw, which is just after he shoots the dog and he turns his back and, they suddenly cut to a scene where Dad comes home, there's happy banjos playing and so on, and the mood is absolutely shattered by a really poor directorial editing decision where it might have had me, but no, it didn't work.
It was more the epilogue. I mean, he was walking away from shooting him. There's not much more they could really show. They probably could.
He could have drawn his face a bit or, something. Or had another moment when the mother went to him afterwards or something. But it was this sudden, shocking shift that just didn't work.
Yeah, they could have played it a little bit more and gone on with that.
So no, I didn't cry, but I did enjoy it. So it really reminded me of a lot of the Disney films I saw on TV and so on when I was growing up, where there was a very strong focus on filming nature in the wild. Now, that nature may have been manipulated behind the scenes, and in Old Yeller, that certainly is the case in a couple of places. But there were two scenes that got my attention. One was when he goes out to shoot a boar or something, and he sits down... No, a deer, stag. And he sits down under a tree and he becomes so engaged in watching these chipmunks chase each other around the branches of a tree, he doesn't even notice that his quarry, the stag, has turned up. And he has deliberately, just before that, not shot a doe and its child, because obviously he has sentiment about that, even in this tough Wild West. So that kind of scene was, to me, was very Disney of a particular period.
And it was also a very coming of age of this boy into a man.
Yeah.
All these big themes there, and the father comes back at the end, and he's that was rough on you. But,
and Dad missed the whole thing.
He missed the whole thing, yeah. Which is, I think, works because he really does stand up that character through the film.
The son?
Yes.
Travis,
son, yes. He really does. I think his performance was great. I really followed that. I mean, but you know what? The bit which made me feel a lot more for the dog, for Old Yeller, was the scene when he starts fighting the wild pigs. And he gets hurt there. I thought Old Yeller might die there. And because that was more sudden, I was feeling a little bit more for the dog in that point. But then when they start, they mention that disease which is going through the valley.
Hydrophobia, which is basically rabies.
Yeah, which is rabies. And they mention it twice in quite, moments.
Everything is telegraphed very strongly.
And I'm sitting there going, well, I know he's going to get rabies now. And so when he did get rabies, and I just went, okay, sure.
Well, they flagged it so much that my 11-year-old picked up on it, and he could see what was going to happen.
Yep.
I had mentioned something sad happens.
Yeah.
He saw it and he left the room. He didn't want to see it. It was really, really obvious.
I look at this one dog movie which has got me emotionally, and it was Marley and Me.
Which I haven't seen.
Right. So, but that one, you really get a progression from the start of them owning the dog to the end.
So the relationship.
So it's over a certain period of time. So you get that, relationships and bonds and memories and sentimentality throughout the film. So I really felt with that one. Whereas this here, I love dogs, but I couldn't feel sad for it. I thought, okay, well, he shot him, and it's a big moment for him, not necessarily feeling for the dog.
Well, I'm glad you said Marley and Me. For a moment, I was worried you were going to say Scooby-Doo or something.
No.
Or maybe Lassie. The other great, dog film character.
Yeah.
But, the other thing that really annoyed me about the film was the mother. Here she is, the pioneer.
Oh.
No. One thing about the mother.
Okay.
Or about the filmmaking around the mother.
Yeah.
Here's this, out in the wilds of Texas, just after the Civil War, woman. Dad's gone away. She's holding it all together with the two young boys in the middle of a lot of danger and whatever else. And her hair is always perfect, and she wears so much lipstick and makeup.
Yeah.
It was, and I know we've moved on, in terms of our perceptions and so on. But I kept looking at her when they had close-ups and thinking the lipstick is so obvious that I'm sorry, I don't believe you're a pioneer woman.
Yeah,
I know it's a Disney film, but I just don't.
I
buy
did not even recognise that. I really liked her actually. I thought she was really good.
And Dorothy Maguire, who plays the mother, have you seen her in things other than this?
No.
Coincidentally, we just happened to watch an old black and white film made at or towards the end of the Second World War called The Enchanted Cottage, a very famous film that we'd never seen before. And she plays the woman in that, and her character for most of the film is, constantly described, including by herself, as plain and ugly and so on. But then this thing happens where she becomes transformed to be quite beautiful, and she shifts backwards and forwards in this film. And I'd heard of her, but never seen her perform before. I thought she was fantastic in that. And I really liked her performance, but the makeup kept getting in the way and thinking, oh, okay, now it's feeling artificial. But look, I'm being critical. I did like the film.
I didn't mind it either. I mean, there's these guys who are entering through the film as well. There's the Jeff York, played by Bud Cersei. Was that the bearded guy?
Oh, the guy with missing teeth.
Yeah, he comes into it, which he's a bit creepy, a little bit.
Yeah,
I don't know why.
He is creepy.
I don't know why he's there really to suit the story, but I don't know what his purpose really is.
I'd bring the girl in, I think.
Well, that was it.
His daughter.
Yeah, that's right. But that in itself. He just leaves her there. But Chuck Connors is Bern Sanderson's character.
So he's the guy who turns up who's the real owner of the dog.
He was the real owner of the dog. I quite like that interaction.
Yeah, I did too.
Between him and the boy and the the son.
And he got a good
Tommy
meal out of it as well.
He got a good meal and a horny toad.
Yeah, and which he quickly, let go into the wild. But that film, there's actually not many characters in it.
No.
Including the dog. And in fact, there's a few animals that probably are relatively strong characters as well. Like, the dog certainly, the mad cow maybe. Okay, I think I'm reaching there a bit. But certainly the
mad
dog.
cow! The man had to shoot a cow. That was a big moment in there when the cow got rabies.
But, the emotional complexity around that pivotal moment at the end where Travis has to shoot the dog, I can understand why that would be very traumatic. It's a really challenging, complex thing for kids. Mm-hmm. It's not that the dog died, it's that the boy had to shoot the dog. Now, I made comparisons in my mind with that moment with the second How to Train Your Dragon film. Have you seen that?
I haven't seen that.
I really detested a scene in that where the main boy's father is killed by the boy's dragon because the dragon is hypnotised by the bad guy, basically.
Right.
And I just thought, this is a really tough, and I think an unfairly tough thing for kids to process. And I'm probably overreacting as an adult because it didn't seem to worry my son. But it was a really challenging thing of that your best friend, it's a pet best friend, can actually have that relationship subverted to the point where it tries to kill you and ends up killing the father. I think that's complex in a way which is not fair to put on kids, and it didn't really serve any purpose in the plot as far as I was concerned. Whereas this one, traumatic though it is in Old Yeller, really is what the film's about, with that and the maturing of the boy.
And they don't kill off the father character or kill off a parent in this. He's going away for work.
Well,
so which is quite.
I'm going to raise that when we get to Paddington.
I know. Yeah,
it's one of my pet hates in kids' films.
Well, you know what? When you brought that up for me, now we're talking about a lot of the parent characters, or at least one of them or so, always gets killed in a Disney film.
Yeah,
it's quite interesting. But here's a bit of trivia here: the wolf that fights with Old Yeller.
I know what you're going to say.
Is a German Shepherd.
Yes.
Not a wolf.
And was muzzled.
Yes.
Both dogs are muzzled in their fight.
And the sounds of Old Yeller growling and snarling after he gets rabies can be heard during both the Tramp's fight scenes in Lady and the Tramp.
I did know that. Sorry. Did you know that Old Yeller has a sequel?
No.
So Old Yeller came out.
Of course. There's Old Yeller's
the new pup. Yeah,
the new pup, which is at the very end, which is Old Yeller.
So in the sequel, which is called Savage Sam, that was made about 6 years later, in the early '60s, is in the story. And I haven't seen this; I've only heard about it. But in the storyline, the sun dog, which is obviously called Savage Sam, and the same two kids, but different adults for some reason, have to go and rescue some kids who are supposed to have been kidnapped by Indians. So
what's it called?
Savage Sam.
Savage Sam.
I'm going to have to try and dig it out. Based on the same writer as Old Yeller and so on, just for some reason different adult actors. Mm-hmm. So that's my bit of trivia about this film, and I'm kind of intrigued.
Okay, so Greg, in terms of scoring this film, what are you going to give it?
I'm giving it 7. I liked it. It is a little bit dated, but I don't mind that. The reason I'm not going higher is that the way it shifted from the pivotal moment to the Jolly Banjos really ruined it for me. I just thought, before I had a chance to process what I was thinking about that, my teenage son was laughing because of the banjo suddenly kicking in, tragic dog, and suddenly, da-dang, dang, 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 happy, 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 dad's home. It just didn't work. And so I feel like I'd like to nudge it up towards an 8, but that one moment for me was kind of like, nah.
Well, I'm giving it a 6.
Oh, okay.
I know it's a classic for many people, and I know in its day it would have been really emotional or a really good film. It's an enjoyable film, but to me it's a bit forgettable. I don't think I'll ever watch Old Yeller again.
Yeah. Are you tempted by the sequel?
Not really.
Okay.
No. I think if you get it, I'll watch it and we might review it. But I give it a 6.
Did you watch it with your child?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't. No, because I know that the whole shooting of Old Yeller might be a bit much for a 5-year-old.
Yeah, I think so. So my 11-year-old walked out.
Yeah, there we go.
All right, well, there's Old Yeller. A bit of a forgotten film, but,
Watch it. It's not a bad film. Watch it. And if you're a dog lover, definitely
don't watch it because you might be very upset.
You might cry a bit.
Don't tell them to watch it.
But yeah. But anyway.
We want to upset you. Go and watch this film.
Yeah, go and see it. Good Old Yeller. You love the songs.
Woof. Okay, so now we're going to go from a classic Disney film of the 50s to something much more recent and using much more recent technology. So, Ricardo, tell us about The Incredibles.
Okay, in this critically acclaimed Pixar animated film, one of the world's top masked crime fighters, Bob Parr, known as Mr. Incredible, and his wife Helen, a superhero in her own right, Elastigirl, are forced to assume boring day-to-day lives after all superpowered activities have been barred by the government. Even though Bob loves his wife and children, he really dreams of returning to his former adventurous life. He gets that chance when he's mysteriously summoned to an island to fight a robot. And when he finds trouble at this place, it's up to his family to save him. The Incredibles has a fantastic array of talent involved in terms of the voices of the characters. You've got Craig T. Nelson, who I had no idea was the voice of Mr. Incredible, but he was always been Mr. Poltergeist to me. He's the father in Poltergeist. You've got Samuel L. Jackson as Frozone, a great character there. And you've got Holly Hunter as Helen Parr, Elastigirl. And you've got even Jason Lee as Buddy. And you've even got Wallace Shawn as a cameo as the insurance boss. This 2004 film was directed by Brad Bird and was Pixar Studios' 6th film. What did you think, Greg?
There is so much in this film that's wonderful. And I saw it when it first came out. I haven't seen it certainly for a long time, maybe not since it came out. And there's so much to admire in it that I picked up on this time around. Mm-hmm. Edna, the costume designer for superheroes par excellence, is a wonderful character. I think it's actually voiced by Brad Bird.
It is voiced, yeah, she's voiced
but the whole,
by Brad Bird, which is amazing. I find that.
Yeah, and the way that she's going, oh, darling, and reminds me a little bit of Linda Hunt from The Year of Living Dangerously and some other things as well. Apparently she's based on Edith Head, who did the costumes for Hollywood back in the 40s and 50s. But
she lights up the film at a certain point when Elastigirl goes to visit her and she's going through the costume.
Well, she lights up every scene she's in.
She does.
But what struck me this time is that when she popped up on screen, I became much more aware this time that this was a film unafraid to take its time telling the story. I mean, the film is just short of 2 hours.
Yeah.
And in fact, Edna doesn't turn up in the story at all until a third of the way through. She has a number of scenes in part of that middle third of the film, and you don't see her again. Now, I think a lesser film would have known that she was, a comic highlight, a highlight in general of the film, right. Voiced by the director, so there could easily have been a runaway ego here, but it had the restraint not to go, well, she does go over the top, but not to go over the top in how she's used in the film. She comes in at a point, she's wonderful, she's the highlight, she moves the story along, and then it goes back to the main characters.
Well, the film starts very well. I mean, it starts with that old news footage of the superheroes of the past and what's happened and why they've been banned by the government.
No, it doesn't. That's what I thought. It starts with the 3 main superheroes being interviewed.
That's right.
Yeah, and I'd totally forgotten that little sequence where they're talking about being a superhero.
Yeah, that's right. I think that other bit comes later.
Yeah. Straight on the back of it.
Straight off the back of it, yeah. But then it starts with this great action sequence, which is reminiscent of all those sort of old 50s sort of gangster films and sort of Tommy guns and whatnot in that...
Well, I think you're almost right. What really struck me this time is how much this is influenced by James Bond. So, James Bond films...
A lot of gadgets.
We'll start with a vignette before the title sequence, before you get the moving circle, shooting Bond kind of stuff, in the classic Bond at least. So you get this vignette, which is its own little self-contained story, but often has the seeds for the larger story, as we have in this case with the buddy, the rejected sidekick. And I was really aware of it when we went to the island, the evil villain's lair. So much brassy Bond-style music, and even the lair itself was like a Bond film out of the 60s.
Yeah,
this is very
right.
Bond.
The music is very Bond. And
the feel on the island. It kind of swaps between a superhero film and a Bond film, and it does it quite effortlessly between the two at points in the film.
I'd say in all the action sequences, which are done superbly, I mean, the film is designed...
It's quite exciting.
Is designed beautifully. I mean, every inch of this film is great, from its production design, from the design of the futuristic sort of elements to the home elements. Everything's so beautifully done. But one thing that just really gets me in this movie is the relationships, the family.
Oh, yes.
It builds that beautifully. And what's one thing, it shows... Pixar do this very well in a lot of their films, and they allow adults to watch it and really... it's enjoyable for adults just as much as children. But in The Incredibles specifically, the building of the relationship between that family is so real and so well done through the arguments, the squabbles, his feeling of depression, he's not happy, to her, to their marriage. There's a lot of things at play here.
And her shift from being an exciting superwoman to being just mum.
A housewife mum, you know. And
who's only perceived that way by her kids. Even though
she's happy with that.
And they see her, well, I don't know if she is entirely, but they see her stretch and literally trying to hold the family together.
Yes.
Quite literally. But she's still just mum and
when
probably
she's
a bit of a boring character to them.
That is a great scene when everything's going out of control. They're having arguments. The daughter, the son, they're all having these squabbles.
And the son's running around.
And then she grabs everyone with her elastic arms, like she is holding the family together, and then he's off.
But then it's interesting you say that, because
in his own world.
When the mother and the two kids are in the plane that gets shot down by the missiles, and they all come pouring out of the plane, and she's unconscious, which is I think one of the most exciting sequences. Even though I knew what happened, I was still thrilled by it. But then she holds them together again on the ocean. But now the kids, or at least the son at this point, contribute. And you're right, it is a really nice progression in the story about how all of them, not just the kids, are evolving as in their own right and as a family unit. And it's very well done. And
that does it really effortlessly. So that's the screenplay. I mean, one thing about Pixar films, and a lot of them, I mean, there's a few which, I love most Pixar films. I wasn't a big fan of Cars or Cars 2.
No, me neither.
Brave had its problems, but even Ratatouille had its issues. But this was Pixar's 6th film, just before Cars.
And just after Nemo.
So that they'd done that. They had a string of Toy Story, Bugs Life, Toy Story 2, Monsters, Inc. They are all wonderful films, and there was one thing that's great about them is their screenplay. They start from such a strong base of a really good script and a really great screenplay. Yes. And that's where I think The Incredibles it is effortless. It does things effortlessly, and you sort of you're just along for the ride, and you're enjoying it so much. But they are a marvel to watch because they are stories told so well.
Well, that's probably because Disney owns both Pixar and Marvel.
Well, they do now.
But that's a joke.
They didn't at that point.
No, I was picking up on your use of the word Marvel. but it'd be interesting. We both know there's a sequel coming out in a couple of years' time.
There is.
It'd be interesting to see how they do that narratively, that having been in this bad place and now they've evolved to become a stronger family unit, and there's the baby to grow up, it'll be interesting to see what they do with the story at that point.
I'm not a massive fan of the sequels that come out through Pixar. I mean,
Toy Story is an exception.
Toy Story is the exception because Toy Story is 1, 2, and 3 are all fantastic in their own right.
Yes.
Monsters University was
not good.
Was quite appalling. I mean, I'm a really big fan of Monsters Inc. and that was a beautiful film, amazing, creatively. It was a great concept. And when Sully's at the door at the very end, and she says "Kitty," and he's this face, and then it just fades down. It's a perfect end. It's a beautiful film. Monsters University was quite the opposite.
No, look, I'm totally with you on this.
So I think Pixar took a bit of a step down on Monsters University, but I mean, at the moment they've come out with Inside Out, which I think it's another probably review for us is yes. I think is possibly their best film and the most amazing crafted film.
We might argue that one because I think Up is a really great film.
Oh yeah, Up is another one great, but I still think it follows the same sort of conventions which Pixar do. WALL-E's another great one. They do great movies.
I didn't like WALL-E.
Isn't
that interesting?
No, I love WALL-E. I think that's fantastic.
But the other thing that struck me about this film is a lot of people die in the course of the story. There's the footage of all the heroes who died because of their cape. It's funny.
That's right,
yeah.
yes.
There's where Mr. Incredible is looking at the villains archive of all the heroes he's killed with his robot. You see the decaying skeleton of one in the underground cave. A lot of the henchmen get killed one way or another by the heroes.
Yes, they do.
And I was thinking, I don't remember Pixar sort of doing death before this, and that's why I know that Nemo came before it, because I went back to look, and Nemo has at the start the death of the mother and all the children. Yeah, the children are eggs, so that doesn't particularly register.
Which is quite a full-on scene to begin the film.
It is.
It really is.
And because you've got to know the mother a bit as a character, and then suddenly she's just gone. And I think some of the Pixar films, I don't want to overgeneralise, but some of the Pixar films actually have matured as stories, when you compare the progression. So you've got Nemo, then you've got this one here, you've got the death of the older woman in Up. Toy Story 3 really starts to talk about, I think, death and separation.
Oh, look, the end of Toy Story 3 when they're going through the furnace at the very end.
That's exactly what I mean.
It's pretty dark and it's quite very moving. But if you want to go for Up, I don't think we will review Up, so I want to talk about just the opening of Up in terms of what Pixar.
So that first 10-15 minutes.
The first 10-15 minutes.
That first sequence to me is a perfect film.
That
is absolutely a 10.
That montage between showing these two kids growing up to becoming old
and saving for the big dream.
It really is possibly one of the most moving 10 minutes I have seen. It gets me every time.
Oh, absolutely.
You talk about being in tears. That opening 10 minutes of Up, I think it's quite
You're
perfect.
tearing up just talking about
just
it.
Fantastic.
The whole film, I think, is a very, very good film, but the first 10-15 minutes, I think, is absolutely superb.
Oh, it is superb.
So I'm just going to drag us back to The Incredibles, which is, our core focus.
Yeah.
And you can't talk about The Incredibles without talking about Pixar in general, I think. But I went to a Pixar exhibition some years ago now, and one thing that really stayed with me was, I think they called it a colour mood board or a colour theme board or something. It was this one large poster that graphically showed the whole plot of The Incredibles, row by row, where each row was kind of, a historical moment in the film, or a phase in the film, and just showed how colour was treated so carefully in those, so that, at one point you've got the very strong red and black and orange and yellow colours with the volcano and so on. When Mr. Incredible, Bob, is working in the insurance office, everything is very grey and sedate and so on. And it really is a film that takes colour very seriously and uses that to communicate mood in a way that I hadn't quite tweaked to until I saw the board in this exhibition, and then again watched the film this week, and it really struck me.
Well, it's one of the things...
It's craft. It's real craftsmanship.
It really is. Any colorist or colour grader on a film, you get a good colour grader, your film will... They see the film through colour.
Okay, so this is one of the times we might explicitly talk about filmmaker versus film watcher, because I have no idea what a colour grader is.
Okay. Pretty much the colour grader's job is to alter or enhance the colour of your film. So their job can be pretty much matching every shot perfectly in terms of colour. They can pretty much look at your film through a perspective of colour and look at the way the story is told in a colour sense.
But and not to take away at all from what you're saying, but what you're describing, I think, is something that happens after filming.
Yes.
Whereas the mood board, whatever it's called, was... It was like Hitchcock's famous approach to storyboarding the film. It's all worked out beforehand and then you make it. So it sounds like there's something on each side of that
there is
filming process.
No, there sort of is. I think with computer animation, you've always got... Everything has to be planned because it's being done in a computer. Whereas in filmic terms, your photographer will know. You'll have what you want to do instead of colour or whatnot with your photographer. But what the colorist will do is they'll amp it up a lot more. I mean, there was one thing in Lord of the Rings. There was one scene where they said, well, I think it should be nighttime now, and they made the day into night. There's things they can do.
I get that. No, thank you. While we're talking about the technical craft of, particularly with computers, there were 3 or 4 moments in The Incredibles where I felt like it wasn't quite finished. There are a few scenes when the animation felt really flat, and for some reason it was when characters were in front of a wall. So the one I particularly remember was when Elastigirl, or Mrs. Incredible, whatever she is at that point, breaks into the villain's headquarter and she's skulking around the corridors and so on. It felt like some of the... I mean, I wasn't watching it in 3D, but that three-dimensionality, I don't know, I felt like they hadn't quite got around to finishing that scene. And I know it can't be right, but there was something odd going on where I thought, something's happened here and I can't quite place it.
The one scene which I love, and that's when Mr. Incredible gets caught and gets shot at from the black blobs.
Yep.
They look fantastic.
Oh, yeah, they do.
They look awesome. The shine on them, they look brilliant. Oh, also the sound design of the movie is very good.
And while we're talking about moments, as an older guy, one moment this time around I really loved is that when Mr. Incredible, I think the first time he takes on that spherical robot killing machine thing, or maybe it's later, but he gets stretched out and you hear his back crack. And he kind of goes, oh, and he's kind of restored. I thought, yeah, I get that. I wish I didn't, but I get it. Did this win any Oscars?
I think it got Best Film. pretty sure it got.
Do you mean Best Animated Film?
Best Animated Film. It had to have at that point. Or was that the year Happy Feet won?
Oh, I don't like Happy Feet.
I'm not a massive fan of Happy Feet.
I went to it ready to love it, and I just so didn't.
Actually, Greg, it actually did win the Oscar, so you'll be happy there.
What did it beat?
It beat Shrek 2
Oh, yeah.
and Shark Tale.
Okay, well, no contest there.
I think it definitely was the winner of that year.
Well, while we talk about winners and so on, what are you giving this out of the good old 10?
I'm giving it a 9.
Yeah, so am I. For me, it's really, really up there. But when I put it in my mind against that first 10, 15 minutes of Up,
yes,
and I think you and I have spoken before when we talked about how we might score films. For me, a benchmark is that first part of Up is a 10. Mm-hmm. And so against that, it's not quite there. So for me, it has to be a 9. But why is it a 9 for you?
There's not a lot of flaws in it, in my eyes. I think it's a really enjoyable film for everybody. And it's one of the hard things to get right in any filmmaking or script writing sense, to be able to cater to not just your market of kids, but to actually bring the adults along with you as well, and to really have the adult themes as well.
Well, and you're right, because it's a common thing now in kids' films that they'll throw in jokes for the adults, and we'll talk about Paddington soon. It does that as well in ways I really liked. But this was about, there is some serious stuff here for kids. There's a big adventure story for everybody, but some serious stuff in here for kids and stuff that adults will recognise about their dreams and adult lives as well.
Absolutely. But I still think it's a 9 though, because it can't be that classic. Because I know that Pixar's done a better one, which I think is Inside Out, which I would give a 10. I think it's nearly there.
But it is truly incredible.
It is. So for our third film we're going to review tonight, it's the 2014 film Paddington. So Greg, tell us about it.
Well, you're right, Ricardo. This is a 2014 film, and in fact, it's the most recent film we've ever reviewed. But it seems destined to become an instant classic, and it's not just because it's based on a series of highly beloved children's books by British author Michael Bond. In amongst a large cast of live actors, Paddington is a marmalade-loving CGI bear, voiced by Ben Whishaw, who's currently playing Q in the James Bond films. After an earthquake in his Peruvian jungle, young Paddington stows away on a boat to London in search of a home with the unnamed British explorer who befriended his family decades ago. And in London, he's taken in by the Brown family, parented by Hugh Bonville and Sally Hawkins, and their housekeeper, Julie Walters, until he finds this new home. And through a series of misadventures, Paddington annoys and endears himself to the Browns, all the while unknowingly stalked by an evil taxidermist, Nicole Kidman, who's assisted by the local neighbourhood watch guy, played by Peter Capaldi, who's the current Doctor Who. You just know that Paddington will join the Brown family, particularly if you've read any of the books, but that doesn't matter. This is a film chock full of delightful set pieces, visual whimsy, and many, many cameo appearances. But there's a deeper meaning here too, about the importance of home and welcoming the stranger. This is a message squarely aimed at modern Britain. We're reminded in the film that World War II Brits readily took London children into their homes during the Blitz. Their heirs are now challenged to welcome strangers from further afield, in that Paddington is clearly the equivalent of refugees from overseas situations. So I don't want to go too deep too soon, Ricardo.
Oh, jeepers, you've really gone deep there.
So tell me about your trivia response, first of all.
When I first saw that they were making Paddington, I thought this can be really bad. But I really love this film for its whimsy, as you said, it's whimsy and its beautiful filmmaking qualities to it. It's quite a gorgeous looking film.
Did you see the film Cold? Had you seen any trailers?
I had seen the trailer, and that was the bathroom.
The bathroom sequence was wonderful, and that really had my hopes up high.
Yeah, that was a fantastic sequence. That was, and no doubt that's why they used it in the trailer. But he's really sweet. The way the story unfolds is beautiful. In old Peru with the family and the uncle and aunt. Beautifully done, well shot. I love the whole contraption with how they make marmalade. Yes. It's really, really lovely. And from just the beautiful touches of like the doll's house, giving you thoughts about the family and who they are, and it's really well done.
But it does that all the way through. It has a really lovely, charming visual sensibility to it.
There's a beautiful tree
on the wall that then sheds and then reblooms.
Is beautifully done. I mean, it really is a lovely fable.
Did you pick the moment after Paddington has been picked up by the family at Paddington Station and they're going home to their place in the taxi, and you see all these great night shots of modern London.
Yeah.
And at one point they're driving through, I think it's Piccadilly, and there's an old guy with a glass of wine who toasts as they go past. Did you pick that?
I know the bit you mean.
Do you know who that was?
No.
I knew instinctively, without knowing what he looks like, I knew that was Michael Bond, who wrote the books. And so when titles came up at the end, I was looking for that, and I was really I was smug that I picked it, but it was just a lovely little homage moment where Michael Bond is welcoming the new Paddington to London. I just thought,
that's
so
brilliant,
good.
actually. That's brilliant. I didn't even know that.
I just knew. But so all the way through, there's all these great things going on. And again, you talked just before about the Incredibles and use of colour in that. I mean, colour's taken very seriously here as well. And it's part of this whole really strong visual sensibility to the filmmaking craft. So when Paddington first meets the family, they're mostly in fairly kind of neutral or monochromatic colours.
Yeah.
But the mother and the son are wearing patches of red.
Red, that's right.
And they're the two who first embrace Paddington. And as the story progresses, more and more members of the family are wearing more and more red until the big climactic scenes in, I think it's the Natural Science Museum.
Natural History Museum.
Thank you, Natural History Museum. The father is completely in red, a T-shirt or something with a shirt over it and so on. Yeah. It's a really interesting progression in colour again.
I think the progression of the father is fantastic, played by Hugh Bonneville from...
who, of course, is Lord Downton or whatever he is. Right. Yep.
And he's great. He's very good in this film. I find the bit when he dresses up as the
tea lady?
Tea lady quite hilarious.
Oh, yes.
And you've got the cameo of the guy from Horrible History.
You've got two, because the secretary, the receptionist, is also from Horrible History.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah, so she's kind of there's the woman Martha someone who always plays Queen Victoria and Queen Elizabeth, and there's another brunette woman who's often in it, and that's the receptionist. So you've got
I didn't even
two Horrible Histories there. You've got two cameo appearances from another great children's TV show called Sorry I've Got No Head. So one of the Explorer clubs in the flashback.
Any of them.
Do you know the show?
No.
And when the mother goes to report Paddington missing and describes he's a bear with a red hat and a blue duffel coat, and the policeman says, well, it's not much to go on, he's also from that show. So there's things in there that I think are quite deliberately, targeted at kids to have that kind of sweet recognition moment. And again, it's just that whole thing of this is a visual experience to be savoured.
It is a visual experience, you're right. When I said it could have been really bad, I meant like in the sort of when Garfield, the movie, came out. It could have been that
twee, or it could have been too smart for its own good,
absolutely.
Or kind of making fun of its legacy, its heritage.
But it wasn't at all.
Now we're going to talk about Nicole Kidman, because I think she's wonderful in this.
Okay, all right.
I can take or leave Nicole Kidman.
I really love Nicole Kidman. I think she's great. I think some of her best work is like The Hours. I think she was wonderful in that.
That's for me, particularly. Sometimes I really like her. Sometimes I kind of go, oh yeah.
Yeah, I usually really love her. In this, she's great. I think she plays a great
She's
villain.
a great baddie.
She's a very good baddie. But I still think that whole baddie trying to get Paddington it feels a bit tacked on to me. I kind of love the sweetness of the movie without it. But I know you need your antagonist. I understand why she's there. But I find those bits very formulaic, whereas I find the other stuff...
But it also explains why the explorer, who was meant to be their great friend, never came back.
That's right.
Because he was protecting the bears.
That was great. I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that section of the film, and the explaining who Nicole Kidman was, and how it was her dad, and why, and he got ousted from the Geographers Society.
Yeah.
That's why she's upset, because they obviously had to live poor and had to live...
It destroyed her childhood.
That's right.
She thinks.
Yes. So I understand that, and the ending's great. They don't kill her.
No.
She's
just a kids' film.
It's a kids' film, but still, they probably could have done that.
They could have, yes.
She has to sweep up horse dung or something like that.
See, a common complaint you hear about Nicole Kidman is that she's cold, but this character's meant to be cold, so she works a treat in it.
She does work.
And I love a couple of filmic jokes around her that were referring quite clearly to her ex-husband Tom Cruise and Mission Impossible. So there's a scene where she comes down on the guy ropes.
That's
into
right.
The house,
yes.
And then when Paddington's trying to escape her in the museum chimney, and he's got those dustbusters to climb the wall, and they start playing that music, it's very like the Mission Impossible.
It's very
theme.
like Mission Impossible.
And you know that's Tom Cruise with the suckers going up the glass or whatever it is.
But I mean, you know who I really loved in this? Julie Walters was great in this as well.
Oh, well, she was very good, but I felt she was very good in a typical Julie Walters very good kind of way.
Yes,
way.
well, she does that role beautifully.
Yes.
Yeah, and Jim Broadbent.
And where
same,
she's
he's always-
drinking the guard under the table.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, great scene.
Jim Broadbent, yes. Even the wallet thief is someone I recognise from Australian
Mm-hmm.
TV series and some British series. Again, it's just got all these great actors, quite happy to come and just do a little bit and then kind of walk away from it. The boy who plays the boyfriend was in a British comedy series targeted at kids called Spy. And again, he hasn't got much to do, but again, in our family, and I'm sure much more in British families, there's that kind of, oh, that's the one from, it's making a new world almost out of building blocks of things that kids already know, as well as the Paddington books themselves.
Even the development of the father-son relationship in this one as well, how he doesn't want him to get hurt.
Yes.
Don't do this, don't do that, don't do this, don't do that, you're going to get hurt here, blah, blah, blah. And seeing that progression lead to,
But even the funny flashback where he and the mother go to the hospital to have the baby and they're carefree hippies or something on the motorbike. And she goes in the hospital saying, this isn't going to change us. No, it's not going to change us. She comes out, days later, whatever it is, and he's now the boring accountant
That's
type.
right.
He's got the beige station wagon because it's been rated well for safety. It's very funny.
It is very funny. It's very well done.
But I can't not talk about this film. The one bit that really seriously aggravated me, and this is going to be a theme I think when we talk about kids films, it's the dead parent scenario. It's that Disney thing. It's lazy storytelling. There was no reason for it. So Uncle what's his face dies in the earthquake. You don't get to see his dead body, which is a bit of a mercy. You just sort of see the hat picked up.
You do.
By the way, did you notice in the credits the hat gets its own technical team? The CGI team.
I didn't see that.
I'm pretty sure I saw that the first time around.
Well, it's very important for Paddington.
It is.
Really
It's a key part of his character. But, they have to kill off the parent figure to launch Paddington onto his quest. And they didn't have to do it. They could have said, look, it's time. We've been wondering about the Explorer, or, you have to go out in the world. They could have done something. But the whole, we kill the parent to give motivation to the character. I'm so over it.
It really happens a lot in kids' films. Just keep an eye out on this when you're watching kids' films, everyone, because it really happens quite a lot.
It started me off badly when I first saw the film, and even the second time around. But then there's so much else that really balances that out. Again, the visual kind of things, like when Paddington's at the station, he's outside the Lost and Found office, but it says Lost. And when they take him in, and then Found lights up.
And it's very quick.
Yes.
It's very quick, but you notice it.
I think I missed that the first time around.
Yeah, I noticed it again this time.
And the animal heads, did you notice that?
No.
So the first time Nicole Kidman goes into her secret lair within the museum and has a secret door or something, as she goes through, there's all these animal heads on the wall, on plaques.
Yes. Yeah.
And on the other side of the wall is the body sticking through the wall. It's the other half of the animal, which I didn't notice last time.
Yeah.
Or, again, both times, I love the bit where the father's trying to say, Paddington's not our problem. And I do want to talk about the deeper aspects of the story, but, Paddington's not our problem. And the son says, you mean you'll send him to an orphanage? And you see this, the Frankenstein castle kind of thing with the orphanage sign. He says, no, it'd be more like, a nice social institution for people who don't have parents. And you see the same scene, that long, bureaucratic replacement for orphanage on the same thing. All those things all the way through.
Yeah,
it's light it up.
It's really well thought out, this film. It's very beautifully done. There's beautiful touches, and it's...
And the bear left joke. I love the bear left joke. When Paddington's chasing the wallet thief?
Yes,
and he's up in the sky, and the wallet thief's got the GPS system in his car that says bear left. He looks out the window. 60 metres bear left. You look out, and 60 metres away, there's a bear on the left of the car.
Yeah. That's very good.
But what about the deeper themes? Did you pick up on those? Do you see them?
You know what? I do see them. Now that you mention them, I do. And when you were talking about it earlier, I see those themes.
Well, I don't want to overgeneralise here, but I wonder if there's a bit of a theme in the making. So Peter Capaldi, who plays the next door neighbour who becomes besotted with Nicole Kidman's villain, he is the current Doctor Who. And just recently, one of the storylines in Doctor Who was very, very clearly about what's happening with youth who are becoming indoctrinated with radical fundamentalist ideologies and about education camps and so on. This was very subtly in the story about a splinter group with this alien group in the middle of our society. And, I don't want to stretch it by saying, Peter Capaldi's in both, because I'm sure that's pretty much coincidence. But there are these two stories that have come out in the last year and a half that are really using known stories to pick up these social issues and have not getting too wrapped up in them, but looking at them a bit and maybe making those issues a bit more palatable to a mass market audience. I'm curious to see if this is just two things or whether it's actually going to become a trend. But I didn't notice it the first time around because I was just, like you say, really enjoying the story and all those light touches. But it's there, and I'm curious to know, is that something we're going to see more of?
Quite possibly.
So, Ricardo, on a deep level, a pure enjoyment level, whatever you like, out of 10.
I'm going to give it an 8. I feel like I'm giving a lot of films an 8. We tend to...
But we choose films that we think are halfway decent.
Yeah.
With Cabaret, obviously, as an exception.
That was an exception. But I think this is a really well-made film. And for its genre, it could have, like I said, it could have been really bad. So it's really well thought out, as I said before. So I'm going to give it an 8.
For me, it's a 9. This is a real labour of love that just shines through the whole thing. It works on a deep level. It works on just a pure visual delight level. There are, silly but really funny jokes in it. There's all those things in it in terms of the casting that I think are there to give kids moments of delight, and maybe families more broader. So I was even teetering towards 10 because I think this is a really well done film. But as I've said before, for me, a 9 is an absolute classic of the genre. And as a modern kid or family film that actually draws on, a legacy from the past, which is Paddington, and makes a few social points along the way without feeling like I'm being lectured, and which you can quite easily miss. I think it's almost a 10, but it doesn't quite transcend its genre. So for me, absolutely a 9, well and truly.
Well, you're making me want to go for a 9 now. You've just sold me on your
I'm
rating.
just naturally a deeper person, or a complete. Can I say tosser?
Okay. So the next episode, we're going to actually go for a boys' night in.
Woohoo!
And just choose some good old-fashioned action films, which we love. And which
or might be about to.
My confession, which I haven't seen, is The Spy Who Loved Me, which is the James Bond film.
No. Back up. Let's have the real confession.
Okay, the real confession.
You have seen no James Bond films that don't have Daniel Craig in them.
I haven't.
It is time.
I haven't seen. That is very true. I haven't seen a Bond film other than Daniel Craig. I've seen bits and pieces of Octopussy.
Yep.
Of Goldfinger.
Yeah, you have to have seen bits of Goldfinger.
Bits of Goldfinger and bits of
Dr. No.
Dr. No. The classic.
And we're deliberately not going to Sean Connery. That's a bit too classic. We're going to go for some really height of Roger Moore territory.
No, and I look forward to seeing it. I really do.
And you're going to be a bit of a bastard to me because you know I don't like heights.
Yeah, and so I know we did Vertigo.
You have suborned my confession into
Stallone's Cliffhanger.
Gee, thanks.
Oh, he's going to love the first scene of that one.
This might be the first time I turn up not having watched the film. I like the opening titles.
I really look forward to hearing your thoughts on it, and we'll be revisiting John McTiernan's Die Hard.
I'm looking forward to seeing Die Hard #1 again, just because of Alan Rickman.
I can't wait to revisit that one again. I think it is such a classic. But until next time, we'll sit here with a beer.
Because we're both such big drinkers. And I can't bear beer, but anyway.
Oh, we'll sit here with a nice
Chardonnay, a nice glass of Fanta.
Conrad or something like that. It'd be nice with a Bond film. Let's go for a martini. What is it?
No,
what is it?
The reality is we'll both have cups of tea, our comfy slippers on, and saying, I could have been a contender. Anyway, so join us for our night in, and girls welcome too.